Evelyn Shaw walked into the elementary school auditorium, and the room went silent instantly. The performance had ended 10 minutes earlier. Theo still stood on stage in his handmade costume, staring at the 100 roses her assistant had just delivered. He didn't take them. Instead, he ran down and grabbed the hand of Owen Parker, the single father who'd stayed to help fold chairs. "Can I go home with you? Maya always has someone come." The principal warned Owen that the woman before them could shut down the entire school with one call. Owen kept his eyes on Evelyn. "That's exactly the problem. Everyone's so afraid of you that nobody's left who'll tell you this child is desperate." Evelyn had just closed the biggest deal of her career. In the boardroom, nobody dared correct a number she'd misread aloud. Employees never called Evelyn directly. Every issue had to pass through 3 layers of assistance first. She believed fear was simply a sign of power and order. She'd built Northline systems from a single laptop in a rented apartment, and she treated every ounce of the empire that followed as proof that her methods worked, including the distance she kept from nearly everyone around her. After her sister Natalie died, Evelyn became Theo's legal guardian. She hired a housekeeper, a private driver, a tutor, a nutritionist, and an assistant dedicated entirely to managing his school schedule. Evelyn genuinely believed she'd given Theo everything a child could possibly need. What Theo actually lacked was simpler than any of that. Evelyn had never once made him breakfast herself. She didn't know his homeroom teacher's name. Calls from the school were always redirected straight to an assistant. Theo's room, staff later admitted, was the only room in the mansion Evelyn had never actually stepped inside since he'd moved in. Theo started skipping homework, hiding his shoes before class, deliberately ruining his uniform, and getting into fights. Adults labeled it defiance. Nobody realized Theo only ever saw Evelyn when something had gone seriously wrong. Teachers had stopped calling the mansion directly months earlier, learning quickly that every message simply vanished into the same assistant's inbox without ever reaching Evelyn at all. Owen had grown up bouncing through foster homes, so he understood exactly what it felt like to have to misbehave just to get an adult's attention. When he adopted Maya, he'd made his own mistakes too. Buying gifts to make her happy, setting too many rules, trying desperately to prove he was a perfect father. He remembered the exact moment he'd realized none of that was actually working, watching Maya flinch at a raised voice that wasn't even directed at her. After Maya deliberately broke a school window one afternoon, Owen realized she didn't need a bigger punishment. Maya needed to know he'd still show up, even when she made a mistake. Owen never spoiled his daughter. He held boundaries firmly, but always searched for what sat underneath the behavior first. After the performance, Evelyn felt Owen had humiliated her in front of parents and teachers. She offered to pay him for his time watching Theo. Owen refused. "I'm not staying because of money," he said. "I'm staying because no child should have to stand on a stage and look out at an empty seat." Evelyn told him he didn't understand the pressure she carried. Owen admitted that was true, but said he understood exactly what it looked like in a child's eyes, waiting for an adult to come back. Several parents nearby had gone quiet, pretending to fold chairs while clearly listening to every word. He didn't take Theo home with him. Instead, Owen knelt down and spoke to him directly. "I can't take you with me, but I can stand right here while you tell your Aunt Evelyn what you actually need." Theo looked at Evelyn and said, "I don't need you to buy me a school. I just want you to sit in mine once." The gymnasium stayed completely still, dozens of parents and teachers watching Evelyn's face for some reaction, none of them daring to break the silence themselves. Evelyn couldn't answer. For the first time, the room wasn't silent because people feared her. It was silent because everyone was waiting for her to finally tell the truth. The next morning, Evelyn tried solving the problem with pure authority, demanding Theo be transferred to a prestigious boarding school. The principal agreed instantly, even knowing the transfer might destabilize him further. Only Owen objected. He'd heard about the decision secondhand, through Maya, and drove straight to the mansion before he'd even fully thought through what he planned to say. He didn't argue about money or status. He simply asked Evelyn one question. Every time this boy upsets you, you send him further away. What is Theo supposed to learn from that? Evelyn accused Owen of overstepping. He agreed and left, but left behind information about a grief support program for children who'd lost a parent. A new incident followed soon after. Theo was accused of shoving another student on the playground. A teacher softened the report, afraid Evelyn might sue the school. Security footage revealed the truth. Another student had mocked Maya for being adopted. Theo stepped in to defend her. Maya had actually been the one to push first. Theo took all the blame himself, terrified Maya might be taken away from Owen. He'd sat through the entire interview with the principal without once mentioning Maya's name, absorbing the full weight of a fight that had never actually been his to own. Evelyn wanted lawyers to handle the incident. Owen insisted both children take responsibility. Apologize. Help repair the damaged area. Learn to find an adult instead of resorting to violence. Owen didn't shield Maya just because she was his own daughter. Evelyn asked why Owen hadn't protected his daughter's reputation. He answered, "Protecting a child doesn't mean making her always right. It means letting her know that even when she's wrong, she still isn't abandoned." Evelyn had no immediate response to that. The words settling somewhere she wasn't used to letting anything settle. The line hit Evelyn hard. Her own childhood had been conditional in exactly the same way. Good performance earned recognition. Mistakes earned isolation. Showing emotion was treated as weakness. Evelyn had built her entire life around the belief that nobody could abandon her if they feared her enough. She sat with that thought longer than she wanted to admit, uncomfortable with how easily Owen had named something she'd spent decades avoiding. The first rail crack appeared when Theo admitted to Maya that he'd caused trouble on purpose. Sometimes, when the school reported a serious enough incident, Evelyn would show up in person. Maya asked, "So you don't actually want to get expelled?" Theo answered, "I just wanted to know how bad it had to get before she'd come herself." Maya told Owen everything. Owen didn't immediately report it to Evelyn. He asked Theo to speak up himself when he was ready, helping him write down what he wanted to say. Evelyn reluctantly attended a guardian support group. Everyone recognized her and grew guarded. Owen deliberately treated her exactly like every other parent there. No flattery, no attacking her, no special treatment. He'd made a point of sitting beside her the first week specifically so nobody else would feel obligated to, quietly signaling to the room that she wasn't there to be handled differently. When Evelyn's phone rang mid-session, Owen didn't grab it or lecture her. He simply asked, "If Theo did that while you were talking, how would it make you feel?" Evelyn turned off her phone and sat through an entire session for the first time. Theo handed Evelyn a piece of paper, folded over many times. "I caused trouble because it's the one appointment you never cancel." Evelyn realized the exact behaviors she wanted to eliminate were the only way Theo knew how to call her home. Evelyn came home and demanded to see all of Theo's personal correspondence. An assistant brought out a box labeled non-urgent. Inside were dozens of notes Theo had asked to be passed along to his aunt. A lunch invitation, family drawing, Parents' Day, a question about a dish his mother used to cook. One note read simply, "I miss Mom more than usual today." Evelyn sat on the floor of her own office reading through the box, something she hadn't done since she was young enough to sit on floors without thinking about it. Nobody had been deliberately cruel. They'd simply followed Evelyn's own rule: never disturb her with anything that didn't affect the company. Evelyn lashed out at her assistant, but for the first time, the woman found the courage to answer back. You told us to protect your time. Nobody ever decided a child's heart counted as an emergency. The assistant's hands were shaking as she said it, clearly bracing for consequences, but unwilling to let the moment pass without saying it anyway. Evelyn realized the problem wasn't only her schedule. She'd made everyone around her so afraid that they no longer dared exercise moral judgment in front of her. Power had shielded Evelyn from inconvenience, while simultaneously cutting her off from the truth. Ruth, Theo's grandmother, filed a petition to review the guardianship. She wasn't after money, and she didn't hate Evelyn. Ruth presented evidence. Evelyn's absence from school meetings. Theo constantly cared for by staff instead of family. Warning signs of his distress going unaddressed. Ruth had agonized over the decision for weeks before filing, telling a friend she'd rather lose the case than watch her grandson keep disappearing behind a wall of employees. Evelyn immediately assembled her top legal team, treating the hearing like a deal she had to win. Owen said something Evelyn didn't want to hear. She'd come to his workshop, offering to hire him as a consultant for the guardianship process. Owen refused the money. He told her Ruth wasn't trying to steal Theo. She was trying to protect him. Evelyn snapped, "If I don't fight, they'll take him from me." Owen answered, "If all you care about is winning, you've already turned Theo into another one of your assets." Owen told her that when he first adopted Maya, he'd been so afraid of the social worker that he hid every difficulty they faced. That fear was exactly what made Maya feel like a burden. He only truly became her father the day he dared to say, "I need help." He said it plainly, without drama, sanding a chair leg the entire time he spoke, as though the confession cost him nothing even though Evelyn could tell it once had. Buried in the guardianship documents was a video Natalie had left behind. Evelyn had never watched it, too afraid to face her sister. In the recording, Natalie said, "I didn't choose you because of money. I chose you because when we were kids, you used to sit outside my door all night, just so I'd know I wasn't alone." Evelyn watched the video twice through, then a third time, pausing it partway to sit with her hands over her face before she could finish it. Natalie knew the world had turned Evelyn cold, but she still believed the sister who once protected her was still in there somewhere. She wasn't asking Evelyn to become a perfect mother. She was only asking her not to let Theo grow up in a house where everyone was paid to stay. Evelyn tried fixing everything with one grand gesture. She canceled a meeting and gave Theo an extravagant day. Private park rental. Expensive toys. Dinner with a celebrity chef. Theo wasn't happy. He rode every ride and ate the dinner politely, but his eyes kept drifting toward the exit, as though the whole day felt like something to get through rather than something to enjoy. He simply asked whether she'd have breakfast with him the following week. Evelyn promised. But that morning, a crisis erupted at the company. Evelyn left before Theo even woke up. He didn't cry or get angry. He simply folded another note and placed it in the box. At his lowest point, Theo packed his own suitcase, saying he wanted to live with Ruth. Evelyn felt betrayed, but Owen stopped her from turning that fear into control. "He's not leaving you," Owen said. "He's just looking for a place where promises actually mean something." Evelyn asked what she needed to do to make Theo stay. Owen answered, "Don't try to convince him. Ask him what he needs, and accept the answer, even if it hurts." During the mediation, Evelyn shocked everyone by dismissing most of her legal team and asking Theo directly, "Who do you want to live with?" The room went completely silent. Lawyers on both sides exchanging uncertain glances. None of them prepared for the case to be handed directly to a 9-year-old. Theo answered, "I want to live with you, but I don't want Grandma to disappear." And I don't want to have to do something bad just to make you show up. For the first time in her life, Evelyn wasn't trying to win. She agreed to share custody with Ruth. Evelyn learned to share control. Theo stayed with Ruth 2 days a week. Evelyn stopped using money to dictate his schedule. She started doing small things herself. Driving Theo to school every Monday. Eating breakfast without her phone. Learning his teachers' names. Reading Theo's letters before her business reports. The Monday drives became the part of her week she found herself looking forward to most. Something she never would have predicted a year earlier. She wasn't perfect every single week. When she showed up late, Evelyn didn't send a gift to apologize. She simply admitted she'd been wrong. Theo continued testing her occasionally with small acts of defiance. Evelyn realized it was simply his way of checking whether the change would last. Instead of threatening to send him away, she told him, "I won't accept lying to me, but I'm still here to help you fix it." The first few times, she had to force the calm into her voice, old instincts screaming at her to escalate. Each time, she chose the slower response instead. Theo slowly began believing that love didn't vanish the moment he made a mistake. Evelyn changed at work too. She didn't become weak or abandon her career. She established a new rule requiring someone in every meeting to be explicitly assigned to challenge her. She admitted to leadership that a culture of fear had been hiding critical information. The first meeting under the new rule felt deeply uncomfortable for everyone involved, including Evelyn, who had to sit through direct disagreement without reflexively shutting it down. One employee told her, "You're still the person who makes us prepare the hardest. But now we're not afraid to tell you when you're wrong." Evelyn understood that respect was different from fear. The romantic thread between them grew slowly. Evelyn thanked Owen, but he made clear he didn't want to become her employee, her parenting consultant, or the person responsible for keeping her a better version of herself. Evelyn respected that boundary. They started grabbing coffee after school pickup, talking about things that had nothing to do with money or responsibility. Neither of them rushed to name what was happening between them, both comfortable letting it stay simple for as long as it needed to. Owen realized that behind her coldness was a woman who'd never believed anyone would actually stay unless she controlled them. Evelyn asked Owen, "You're the only person who isn't afraid of me. Why?" Owen answered, "I used to be afraid of losing everything. Then I learned that people only really lose each other when they stop daring to tell the truth." Evelyn didn't have a quick reply for that one. She simply nodded, letting the silence sit between them without rushing to fill it. A year later, Theo hadn't become a perfectly well-behaved child, but he no longer needed to cause trouble just to make Evelyn appear. Ruth remained an important part of his life. Evelyn learned that sharing responsibility didn't make her any less essential. The two households had settled into a rhythm nobody would have predicted at the start. Ruth and Evelyn occasionally texting about small logistics without either of them treating it as a competition anymore. Maya and Theo became close friends, without ever being pressured to see each other as siblings. The school held a second performance. This time, Evelyn didn't sponsor the stage, order flowers, or bring an entourage of assistants. She arrived 30 minutes early. Evelyn sat on an ordinary folding chair among the other parents. She turned down 3 separate offers to have someone save her a better seat, insisting on lining up like everyone else. When the curtain opened, Theo instinctively looked out into the audience. He found Evelyn. He didn't wave or check a second time. He simply continued his performance. That small detail proved he'd started believing she would stay. Owen sat a few seats from Evelyn with Maya. After the show, Evelyn didn't offer some lavish gesture. She asked Owen, "Would you like to have dinner with me tomorrow? No kids, no work, and I promise I won't buy the restaurant." Owen smiled. "Only if you're on time." Evelyn laughed. "And easy. unguarded sound neither Maya nor Theo had ever heard from her before. This was only the beginning of an equal relationship, not a rushed wedding. In the closing image, Theo runs off the stage and hugs Evelyn. Not because she'd bought him anything. Not because every problem had vanished. He hugged her because, over an entire year, Evelyn had turned small promises into proof. Before meeting Owen, Evelyn Shaw believed power meant the ability to silence an entire room. A single father helped her understand something different. The greatest power was never making people afraid to leave. It was making them believe you'd actually stay. Fear can produce obedience, but it can never produce trust. Money can hire someone to take care of a child, can never replace presence. A child acting out doesn't always need punishment. Sometimes they just need to be heard. Loving a child was never about owning them. It's about building a safe system around them. Do you think a person can truly change through small daily actions? Or does the past always determine who they become? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if this story convinced you that presence matters more than any gift, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.